All right, there we go. Welcome, everybody. So thank you again for joining us. My name is Melanie Taylor. I am the Director of Education and a facilitator here at Eat, Breathe, Thrive, which is a nonprofit organization that aims to prevent and help people recover from eating disorders and provide skills and resources for mindful eating, emotional resilience, and positive embodiment. I will have Brittany introduce herself here in just a moment, my co-partner for the day. As everyone's joining, there's some housekeeping guidelines. So a couple quick reminders is to keep your mic on mute while we're here, unless you're speaking. And a reminder that we are recording. So your video feeds, none of that are going to be displayed on the recording unless you're speaking. So if you'd like to use the chat box, feel free to do that instead. That's perfectly fine. And your video and name will not be displayed otherwise. We're going to start here in a few minutes and do a check-in. And I wanted to just kind of give you that reminder as we're engaging today that we do have those community guidelines, and to think about how to hold space for others, that we can be here and have real conversation about our experiences and the life of being in recovery, while holding space that nothing that you share is going to be something that's challenging for someone else as well. So no numbers or specifics, but we will use direct language to speak about things as they are. So we're going to start with about 30 minutes of conversation, and then we'll have a brief yoga practice for 30 minutes after that. So I'll cue you for that. Do feel free to be comfortable for that. You can do it in your chair, on your mat, on the grass, on the carpet, whatever feels comfortable for you. Let's pass it over to Brittany. Brittany, if you want to introduce yourself and add.
Absolutely. Hi, everyone. I'm Brittany. I'm a support group leader and volunteer with ANAD. ANAD is a nonprofit organization that offers free peer support to anyone dealing with eating disorders, disordered eating, body image issues, and the like. Just to remind everyone, we'll have you already shared that part. But that being said, so I'm gonna start us off with a quick check-in. And our check-in question is, what is your favorite part of summer?
So if anybody'd like to share, feel free to put up your virtual hand, or you can add that into the chat box. And while they're doing that, Brittany, I'm just watching for hands going up. What's your favorite part of summer?
Oh, good question. My favorite part of summer is being outside. More often, I live in Massachusetts, so it's quite cold during the winter, and sometimes our spring isn't super warm. So I love getting outside, and I really love going to the beach.
Yeah, I hear you on that one. And Sierra said her favorite part of summer is paddleboarding. Love to get out there in the water and enjoy the weather on Whidbey Island. Oh, it's beautiful there. Swimming in lakes, vacations. We've got some themes coming up here. Yeah, I completely agree. For me, it's definitely, I'm a camper. I love being in nature. I cannot camp unless there's water. I mean, why would you? Right. And just that, being able to be outdoors. My favorite part is really that there's like a half hour to an hour before any of the family is woken up. So I can have a nice cup of tea and read my book by the campfire in the morning. It's one of my favorite things. I love them being there as well. The rest of the day is lovely, but certainly wonderful when we can do that. So I'm seeing access to fresh produce and flowers, tanning on the deck and being in the pool. Okay, well, we're all coming to your house. Yeah. And I've got Caitlin here said as well that she's got severe allergies. So it's not the most lovely part being around trees and weeds and grass, but love seeing the flowers and the trees. Yeah.
Love that.
So what are some of the challenges, right? Like we talked about all these favorite things, and what I find, that's why we're here today, is to talk about the fact that we can miss some of those favorite things with the challenges that come along with being a human being. It's not even so much having an eating disorder, but being a human being that experiences challenges with body image, eating disorders, relationships with other people. What are some of the things about summer that are concerning or scary? So again, feel free. Yeah, dreaded body shape.
Mm.
Yeah. What are some of those things for you, Brittany?
I really think it's this idea of like expectation. Like with summer comes this, I'm sure people have heard like, get your beach body ready, your bathing suit, and it's just, what does that even mean? And I think that this whole idea of expectation and pressure. So yeah, Caitlin, I agree with the dreaded body image, or sorry, the dreaded body shape, that idea of something ideal for the summer. Yeah.
Yeah, no, and I'm just going to read from the chat box here as well.
Yeah.
I'm right with you on that one. Joy mentioned about wearing baggy clothes and sweatpants and hoodies and things that are too hot to wear in the summer. There is there is a lesser clothing, right? It's just simply they're more revealing.
Totally.
Being uncomfortable and being in a bathing suit, wanting to have some of the treats that come along with summer, right? Being able to move our bodies in a way that is helpful. I definitely agree with the bugs.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, you called out on some of the major ones, right? There's this more revealing clothing, there's pressure to lose weight or change our appearance. There's definitely a change of activities, like being outside, for Caitlin, that's really challenging. Everybody wants to be outside. She's like outside and I can't breathe with allergies. But there's that change in it. There's an expectation that our body's just ready to be in the water and go swimming and boating and hiking and all these things that often come along with summer. For me, one of the challenging parts can be actually the lack of structure. Like everything seems to change. So, being a teacher, I don't teach as much in the summertime as I do in the rest of the year. So my whole structure changes, and then like kind of resetting myself into a structure that's really healthy and isn't perpetrating some of the challenges that I go through. Another big one is family events, right? It's like tend to be around family a bit more often. I can see some nodding heads there as well. Yeah. So how do we be with that, you guys? Like, how can we care for ourselves in a way that really allows us to honor and support and cope with some of these challenges so that we get back to enjoying summer and all these beautiful things that we shared that are our favorite parts? So open it up if anybody wants to say anything. Do the opposite of what first pops in my head. Oh, I love that. My first idea, I call that my shitty first draft.
Yeah.
Right? It's like the first thing that comes up, not always super helpful. What about for you, Brittany? What are some of the things that you find helpful for you to help cope with or
Yeah.
care for yourself during this time?
Yeah. So I think there's a few things, but one is trying to be maybe just a little bit more mindful when I'm having some of these, like, whether it's negative self-talk or things like that that happen to come up, just being more mindful about it, and really like letting myself feel it, but not letting myself stick in that. So knowing that I have something else, like using my toolbox of skills, like, okay, I can bring my dog for a walk, or I can call a friend, or I can just go outside and focus on going to the beach. And what I love to do is, putting on a podcast and just lying in the sun or listening to a book. And I think just being mindful of the feelings, but also mindful of the skills that I have to be able to use.
Yeah, oh, I love that. I think, whenever we get in something that's disrupting or can feel like really challenging, I think the first thing we forget is that we have tools. It's not the first time we've been here. So
Yeah.
being mindful of our experience. I love what Sierra said here, labeling thoughts as separate from myself, not identifying with
Yes.
them, right? Yeah, and I would extend that for me. It's like thoughts, feelings, and emotions
Yeah.
and sensations, as those are four different things. These are the thoughts
Mhm.
in my head. This is how I feel about them. These are the emotions I'm experiencing, which mostly I feel like we experience those in our body. And then these
Mhm.
are the sensations that my body's communicating with me, like hunger, fullness, fatigue, excitement. Like, what's my breathing doing in those moments, and separating them, kind of getting back to that, what you said, that mindfulness, and then caring for it, right? Caring for
Mhm.
ourselves and that experience. Yeah. What are some of the other things that you guys find helpful? Is there things that you can do or things that you already have in your toolbox that help you to feel a bit more? I mean, we were talking about self-care in this moment.
Sometimes, gentle yoga, call someone, support groups. Those are good ones.
Mhm.
I was also going to say, doing something very small for myself. Like if that means going and going to my favorite coffee shop and treating myself to a coffee, or grabbing that iced coffee that I like. Yeah, I had iced coffee at home, but maybe I want to go treat myself, or getting new body wash or a new lotion. Yeah, suntan cream with yoga outside. These are all like super great things, but I think too, like I always think about smells and things that I can feel to help support myself feel better, like you said with sensations, Melanie. Um, so like treating yourself a little bit, even if it's something small, going to the library and getting a new book or downloading a new podcast.
Yeah.
You know. Mhm.
Yeah. No, exactly that. Like I always find it's the littlest things that I forget I have access to that I need the most
Mhm.
in those times. So, like knowing it's okay to take a break, especially for those family
Yeah.
experiences. Like I think about where are we staying? Often we'll camp together. So like if we're going to be camping together, this one spot I have my own place that I'm camping and they have their own. So being okay with like going inside and closing the door, letting people know I'm just going to take a break, right? Like being okay to step out. And then also being okay to step in and knowing
Mhm.
that's okay. I think that's really important. What I mentioned earlier about that early, like have a cup of tea and just sit by myself and read, like setting my tone for the day. That's self-care for me. And there's times too where thinking about who I'm engaging with or who I'm around. Some of family or people in my life can be rather triggering to my experiences, especially those that are going to comment on my body, and how I am or I'm not doing good. So being ready for that, being okay to say that that's not a conversation, or how am I going to respond, I think is really helpful. But also I might think about, where am I staying? Do I have a place that I can go to? So there's a certain family member that I stay at a hotel, not at their house, so that I know that I can step away and I have that space that's just for me. And I'm seeing this like breathing exercises, meditation, call someone. I love that. Taking a break for yoga. Yeah, these are all really helpful tools to support ourselves in those moments, because they can be really challenging. And I think we forget that, we forget our own humanity. If it was someone else that was struggling, we would take such good care of them. And then when it's us, sometimes it's like judgment,
Mhm.
loathing, right? Yeah.
So much harder to take care of ourselves than others.
Yeah. It's the different viewpoint, I find, right? Like how I see
Mhm.
myself, the expectations I have on myself for sure.
Mhm. Mhm.
And the ones that I might have on others are very different. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So I'm curious too around how do we care for ourselves in, some of the travel, like what are some of the things that might be helpful when we are taking on vacation where maybe you don't have access to all the things you have access to at home? What are some of the things that you guys do around travels, or things you can take with you, or things that you look up? I'm just curious.
For me, one thing that I think is really helpful when I'm traveling and is just rest, like knowing whether that means taking, like you said, taking a break when I need it. If I feel tired before everyone else, it's okay to go to bed before other people, or it's okay to sleep in later than my family members, or even whoever I'm with, my friends, my family. Um, so rest is just a big one for me, because I also know my defenses, or my ability to kind of grab those skills and get into that toolbox when I need it, it's much harder if I'm tired.
Oh, so true. Yeah, Susan's saying water. I so agree with you,
Mhm.
Susan. Like, for a couple reasons, right? Because you can be out like on the paddleboard by yourself. Um, Journaling. Yeah, I love what you said about it's okay to step out, right? Like I can go
Mhm.
to bed earlier. I actually just came back from a little vacation, and I'm there with my son and his girlfriend, and I mean, forget all the other stuff. My mind's just like, this is my son's eventually not going to want to go on vacation with his mom. So there's this internal pressure of like, I should be
Mhm.
enjoying all of this, doing everything that they want to do, and hanging out. And at the same time, I found myself, I'd hurt my knee before I left too. So this was a good test for me
Mhm.
of being able to step out. Yeah. Oh, I love this. And Tina's talking about, thinking about having
Mhm.
foods that are comfortable, things that you can take with you,
Totally.
especially for like check the menu before you go so that you can pick something and, call and ask any questions. I love that. I think this is like that, truly taking an effort to care for yourself. Yeah, really great.
Yeah, that's awesome. I forgot about that, but I think it's become such a habit now to just like make sure I have snacks, make sure I'm never getting to the point of being too hungry, making sure that I have what I need um, on a trip where I may not know where exactly we're going, to almost like support myself in some sort of spontaneity, like so that it's okay if uh, we go somewhere and I don't know what's on the menu. I have some things that I can fall back on.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that, Tina. I definitely agree with that.
Yeah. I mean, even just, uh, food even has gotten so expensive as well, right? Just travel food can be much more expensive. We actually typically do a grocery store run, which I have like a grocery store list. We'll go pick up things. So we've got
Mhm.
things that are in our hotel where we're staying, things like that are easeful. Because I find also like to the point of having fun in our summer, it's really easy to start having fun and kind of forget about things like where's my meal coming from and
Yep.
all those things as well. So I love the sense of planning a little bit before you go, and getting a sense of what you might need or what you might want to have around you as well. Yeah. So thinking about those family events, I know in the work that we do here at Eat, Breathe, Thrive, I'm hearing this starts to come into this around the holidays and in the summertime more and more. What are some of the tools or things that you do to support yourself being around family?
Mm. Something that I've learned, and it's definitely taken a lot of um, time and a little bit of courage on my own part, but is just reminding people if something they're talking about, whether it is bodies or what we're eating or this or diets, that if it's making me uncomfortable, part of taking care of myself is saying something. That doesn't mean they have to be comfortable with it, but being okay with sharing what I need in the moment. And if they're not going to respect it, that I'm going to step aside or leave that conversation. So yeah, I think that's taken a lot of, it's definitely taken practice, but I think it's another good thing to have in your back pocket to be able to just say like, hey, I'm not really comfortable having this conversation. Do you mind if we talk about something else? Or is it okay? Is it okay? Just saying, I'm gonna go hang out over here, or I'm gonna go for a walk or talk to someone else.
I love what you said there, but I don't have to ask permission, right? So I can communicate. And I'm seeing that in the chat box too, right? Setting boundaries, changing the subject. I mean, sometimes we feel the courage to say, I'm not comfortable having this conversation. Let's talk about something else. That's great. I think that sometimes changing the conversation is a really gentle way to do that for ourselves, is like just being able to say, oh my goodness, did you hear about, or right, like have a few things. I find it really helpful to have a few things that I feel comfortable to talk about that I can switch gears to as well, so that you have that balance between when I feel like I can speak for myself, I'm ready, and when I don't, I'm ready to change the subject. So I always think with a couple of things happening in my life is really helpful. Oh, Samantha, so true. Dishing your own food, right? Being able to decide what you're going to have versus having a family member do that. My husband loves to cook, and so he'll often bring me the plate. It's like, nope. Let me do it myself. It's an active, I think, really healthy thing too, to be able to sit down and consider, what am I putting on the plate? What's going to serve my body? What's going to feel good in my body as well, and how much of it I want, knowing I can go back or I cannot finish what I take also is really important. Yeah. Any other thoughts around that? And I'm just looking at the next question, but feel free to continue answering that question. Sports and activities and all these things of like taking care of ourselves through all of the I think there's like an internal desire to do more and go out. Like I really want to go out and do some hiking. Two problems. I hurt my knee. And second of all, we're around a bunch of forest fires right now. So just thinking about the air quality and stuff. But I find I can easily choose to do more than my body wants to do, or not take breaks or stop when I'm tired, or, nourish my body when I'm tired. So I'm curious, what do you guys do around like deciding how much activity you're going to do throughout the day or throughout the week, and how you care for yourselves to be ready for that?
I think for me, and this is kind of like throughout the year, and I try to really, remember it during the summertime, is to, again, be okay with resting, be okay with not doing anything. Sometimes I just find that like our calendars are so full that I don't, like on weekends, especially, you like go back to work on a Monday and you're so tired. And it's like, oh, I should have just given myself a few hours to like chill, whether that means sitting outside and not doing any like physical activity, or if that means lying on the couch watching a movie when it's beautiful and people are at the beach, like that's okay. So I think remembering to give myself the space and time to rest.
Yeah. I find I love that too, right? I find some of the things, because I do love being out in nature. So I find things that I'm going to do along, like if I go for a hike, I definitely take my good camera, because it'll prompt me to stop and take pictures more often so I can break. I also plan little snacks throughout as well. So I'll have something in my pocket that I can munch on if I'm feeling hungry. Definitely make sure I've got my water pack with me, like little things that prompt me to nourish and care for myself throughout. That's really helpful. Tina's saying that listening to my body when it feels pain or sore, to stop and not do what it is that maybe you want to do. Finding ways to enjoy the parts that do feel comfortable and safe in our bodies, I think, is really important. And especially when there's injuries and stuff like that too. But I think in general, I think injuries sometimes can be helpful, can help us do that. Susan, did you want to say something?
Yes, I went to Liverpool, so that's miles away from where you are, but I went there for a night the other day on my own. And the main thing is that, especially if you're on your own, is to not project too far into the future, because then you do so much more if you just take things in bite-sized, manageable pieces.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, like under planning. I love that. Thanks for sharing that, Susan. Yeah, and I was saying there that I find sometimes my injuries help to heighten my awareness of what my body's needs are. So I actually sometimes, like when my knee's hurting, I take better care of myself because I can feel it so much. It's like communicating with me. And at the same time, I think our hopes and wanting to do things, like I'll push myself to try to recover quickly, and step over my body's sensations and communication, that, like I've got a thought like, well, I want to get to the top of the mountain and my knee's going, but I'm in pain. So being able to break apart those messages and determine the best one to listen to. How do I care for my wanting to be on the mountain and wanting to see the views? Sometimes that's stopping and enjoying a view that's through the trees and not necessarily the one that's at the top of the mountain. I think it can be really helpful. Well, I want to get us moving over to yoga. So I'm going to do a practice, and because I did hurt my knee, speaking of self-care, we're going to have Brittany's going to be on the screen. So if you want to look at someone to see how the cue is showing up in her body or her listening, and being able to think about, the types of practices and things that we can do to start listening into our body sensations, a bit more than we listen to our thoughts, feelings, and emotions when it comes to taking action. I don't know about you, but I'm often led by my thoughts, feelings, and emotions more. It's easier because they're louder than listening into what my body's needs are. So if you want to find a comfortable position, whether in a chair, if you'd like to go to a yoga mat, just whatever works for you. And a reminder that you can be on camera for this. I'll be able to see you, which can help me with cueing, but your video will not be shown on the recording. And let's just first start off by finding our seat. So maybe a little wiggle, get a little present to, what's below me? What part of me is touching the surface below me? Can you become a bit present to gravity? Noticing that you don't need to hold yourself to the earth at all. That without any effort, you can be grounded just by noticing the surface below you, your connection to that, or gravity. And sometimes it takes me all three. And once you have that sense of being grounded, I invite you to begin listening to your breath. And the difference between listening and trying to shape your breath, but just listen to it. You might notice, where do you notice your breathing? What part of your body do you feel breathing in? You might notice the consistency of your breathing. Does it feel flowy, constrained? Does it feel easier in some parts and more challenging in others? And can you find a place in your breath that feels easeful? And not as something to get right, but something to explore, to be curious about. I think in yoga in particular, we can get caught up with what a yoga breath is supposed to be versus finding an easeful way of breathing today. So is easeful for you today a more shallow breath, shorter breath? Is it a longer breath or somewhere in the middle? Giving yourself permission and grace today to stay with the breath that feels easeful in your practice. As we pointed out, it's okay to take a rest with our breath. And be with it exactly as it is. So then bringing your hands to heart center, if that feels comfortable. And we're doing a little bit of movement here, moving with the pace of our breath. You know, I find yoga can remind me that I don't have to speed up or slow down. I can be with how I feel in this moment. So taking an inhale, letting our arms come all the way up towards the ceiling, taking the whole length of the inhale as you come up. Using your whole exhale, open the hands up, out to the sides and back towards heart center. And see if you can time that with your own breath pace. So less about what somebody else's pace might be. And more about your own pace, your own breath in this moment. You might even consider how much are you opening the arms up and listening to your own body. What feels good here? How much of a stretch back do you want your arms to be? Do you want a little bit or a lot? And doing one more, leaving your hands at heart center when you feel done. And let the hands come down and rest either on the knees or the thighs, whatever feels comfortable here. We're going to move with that same intentful pattern of pace through a bit of an upper body stretch here. So we're reaching your right arm up with an inhale. Exhale, just bend towards the left side and see if you can keep that left side of the body and right side of the body grounded to the mat or your chair. Take a full breath here, using your inhale to come back up. Exhale, change your hands. Take a full inhale, give a little bit of a reach towards the ceiling, and your exhale, drop to the opposite side. Again, keep that grounding sensation. Make you feel like pressing your body towards the mat. Again, using an inhale to come up. Exhale, change arms. Take a full inhale, reach those fingers towards the ceiling. And then see if you can slow your exhale just gently as you come to the side. Moving at your own pace here. Do you want a full breath there and pause in that beautiful stretch? Do you want to move a bit more? You can come right into moving to the other side. Not worrying where anyone else is in their practice. But see if you can find your own little flow, maybe even adjust it a little bit. You might even try reaching a bit across the opposite knee versus to the side, reaching over the body. See how that feels different and what feels good for you. You might want both arms in movement versus just one. And regardless of how you're moving here, let yourself explore and move at your own pace. And then coming back to center when you've done both sides and feel ready to move on. So yogi choice here, I'm going to stay in my chair. If you'd like to either come to tabletop or just sit a bit further out in your chair, so you've got a bit more room behind you. And everyone you find, take that moment to ground again. So notice what parts of your body are connected to the floor or your chair. Notice gravity. As much as you try right now, you could not fly away. And then using that same, listening to your own breathing pattern, let's move into some cat-cow movement. And think about too, like less about the pose itself and what it looks like or how you've done it before, but more exploring through your spine and how it feels with your breath. As you inhale, stretching the front of the body, and as you exhale, stretching the back of the body. And what feels good in your own body today? Is it a little bit of movement, really gentle? Is there a lot of movement? Might depend on where you are in your day. Some of us are here and it's the evening, and some of us are here and it's first thing in the morning, or anywhere in between. See if you can find a playfulness here. Maybe it's a little bit of barrel roll added in, or reaching the arms forward if you happen to be seated. But however you're doing the practice, I invite you to do it at your own pace, with your own easeful breath. And taking one or two more movements and then coming back to find neutral. So I'm going to give two options for our next pose here, for those of you that are seated and those of you that are in the tabletop position. So if you're in tabletop, I invite you to come into a low lunge, so bringing one knee forward. And if you're seated, you can come into a seated figure four, so lifting one leg up so that I've got my right leg up and resting the outside of my right ankle on top of, just above my left leg. And for both, think about how we do these poses. We tend to do them based on the picture versus our own body and how we're feeling in this moment. And so in your lunge, I invite you to have a lunge that keeps your breath really easeful. So notice how far back you've chosen to have your back leg, how much lunge you're experiencing, knowing you can adapt that by stepping that front foot either a bit further away or bringing it back a bit. And then with the figure four pose, if you've got your leg cross-seated, you might find I'm finding a lot of sensation here with how my knee's been feeling this week. So I'm going to stay right where I am. And you can adapt your sensation by pressing your knee, the one that's up, down towards the floor. And you can shift your weight of the upper body and lean forward. And that's going to both change how you feel in the pose, but it also can increase or remove sensation. So it's being with your own practice today. Finding a place that feels comfortable, knowing you can come in and out. So perhaps you want to lean back if you're in your low lunge, straightening out the front leg, leaning back into the back leg. If you lean forward in your figure four, perhaps you lean back for a moment, take a few breaths away from the sensations before coming back in and finding the amount of sensation you want. I think about that like the Goldilocks and the Three Bears. Like, is there too much sensation, too little sensation, or is it just right? And taking a few breaths here is being with your own breath pace, listening, checking in with those 4 different things we identified. What sensations do you feel in the body right now? And how would you describe those sensations? And then also noticing that you might have thoughts happening in the mind. You might be experiencing an emotion or having feelings about the sensation or something else in your day. And when you feel ready coming out of the pose, so for sitting in my chair, I'm going to bring my leg back down. And if you're in a low lunge, you might come back to tabletop or even back to a child's pose. Just taking a moment here. Take a few breaths in between poses. Finding that easefulness of breathing again. And that doesn't mean that your breath necessarily is peaceful or slow or fast, but what feels easeful for you in this moment. Then when you feel ready, you can experience the other side of this pose. And I always think about how to care for myself in these poses. This is my injured knee. And so this pose is a bit more challenging. So I'm actually going to straighten my right leg out. So I've got my left knee up. So I'm straightening out that leg so there's a little bit less pressure bringing my knee up. That feels a bit better. I could also even just move my leg up or down so that there's less angle on my knee. So for you, what would that be like to bring compassion to your pose here? Would that be putting something underneath your wrists, underneath your knee, changing your position, having more or less lunge or more or less leaning into the pose? And find a place where you've got some sensation, but it's not changing your breathing pattern. Doesn't feel like pushing through. Knowing you can come in and out of the pose at any point, using that counteracting pose. When you feel ready, coming out of the pose into a counter pose. So again, that might be tabletop or child's pose. It might be coming back to seated. I'm actually going to come into a bit of a forward fold from my seated position. So just allowing myself to drape forward over my legs. Finding something where you can find that easeful breath and rest. And then coming back to either your seated pose or your tabletop. So we're going to come back into the pose we were just in, but we're going to play with challenging it a little bit so we can work with how do we support ourselves in those challenging moments where we need some coping. So again, I'm going to come into my figure 4 pose here in my chair. And this time as I go through that, or as you're stepping into your low lunge, I invite you to bring a bit more sensation. So for me, I'm going to lean a bit further forward into the pose. And in your low lunge, you can do a couple of things. You can extend the lunge a little bit with moving your front leg forward or back. You could also bring your arms up, or even put them in behind the back. And so finding a reasonable amount of more sensation. So I'm not asking you to drown in sensation or feel like you can't pull out, but can you cause a bit more sensation than that just right feeling? Where it feels a little bit challenging even. And once you found that place, I want you to take notice of 1 to 2 things in your environment that you can see. And perhaps you see the color of the walls, an animal in the room with you, a plant, a picture. There's 1 or 2 things that you can see in your environment. And then what are 1 or 2 things you can hear? Can you hear the hum of technology, people moving around your space, the sound of nature outside? Is there anything you can smell? Perhaps it's the smell of your own shampoo or creams. The smell of nature or scents in the room. And gently coming out of the pose, taking a moment for whatever's going to feel good in the body right now. Maybe it's that counter pose. For me, I actually want to come into just a little bit of movement. So I'm getting a bit of circles in my seated pose. If you're in your tabletop, it might be some cat-cow, child's pose, even a down dog here. And then coming into the other side. So again, finding more sensation, something that feels a little bit challenging without pushing yourself into the weeds or in under the surface. And then we're going to continue that exploration of our space around us. Noticing 1 or 2 things you can see. And see if you can find something else. One or two things you can hear. Noticing one or two things you can smell. And lastly, noticing the temperature of the air around you on your skin. Are there areas that feel different from other areas? Does some feel cold? Does some feel warm? Perhaps some feel a bit more neutral because they're in the middle. And before stepping out of the pose, take a moment to notice the parts of your body connecting with the mat or the chair, and noticing the parts of your body that are supporting another part of your body, like how your ankle in low lunge is supporting your knee, or how your knee is supporting your pelvis. If you're seated, you might even notice that your pelvis is supporting your spine, your shoulders and your neck and your spine is supporting your head. That one leg is supporting the other. And then coming out of the pose when you're ready. And finding a pose to rest in for about the next minute, minute and a half. Perhaps you want a bit more movement and want to stay with those counter poses, knowing that movement for rest is okay. Doesn't always need to be stillness. Perhaps you'd like to just sit back in your chair, allow your arms to relax. Let the head be supported. And just taking a little bit of silence here, knowing you can always ground or orient yourself to your room with the senses if you need that. And then giving yourself a little bit of time to transition back to the group. And as you're doing that, I'll share a little bit about what to expect after the session. By sometime, usually tomorrow or the following day, you'll get an email from me that has a link to the recording and some information about programs that are happening both at Eat, Breathe, Thrive and at ANAD. And I wanted to leave it open if anyone had any final questions or wanted to share even just one or two words about how you're feeling in this moment. So as always, feel free to use the chat for that as well. Or come off mute if you'd like to ask openly. How about you, Brittany? We had a check-in from you.
Yeah, I'm feeling refreshed and calm, nice and calm.
You got it. Thanks for sharing that you're here for your first time, Erin. It's lovely to have you. Maureen and her cat are both feeling balanced. I love doing yoga at home now. I mean, I do wish that we could be back in studios together more often, but I do love that we get to be in our own environment. Oh, good to have you, Samantha said. Great to check in after doing the Eat, Breathe, Thrive program. Yeah, Erin says also having her cat next to her as well. Yeah. So I'd love to hear if you were to describe how, oh yes, yoga is very clever. Susan said, very clever the difference yoga makes to one's overall outlook. Yoga, I think it's like sneaky magic. I really love that. So why don't we check out as a group, what are 1 or 2 words for how you're creating your summer to be? What are one of the 2 words that you would use to describe how you're going to care for yourself and experience this summer? How about for you, Brittany?
I'm going to experience the summer by being aware and patient.
There's a theme happening in the chat box: patience, and grace. Yeah, absolutely. Let me see, for me, yeah, I think gentle patience, I think, is a good one for me this year. And I'm being protective and balanced. Oh, I love that, right? Caring for yourself, present and balanced. I've got that, Caitlin. Relieved. I'm so grateful that you're able to start recovery and begin having help for your recovery. It's really important. Self-care and working on body acceptance. Wonderful to hear that. Well, everyone, thank you so much for being with us today. I always say that this fills my cup up so much to be able to be together in community. I hope that you feel the same. Brittany, is there any closing words you wanted to share today?
Yeah, thank you all for having me. It was such a wonderful experience. And yeah, Melanie, I agree. It's such a nice way to fill our own cups as well, all together.
Agreed. Thank you, everybody, for being here today. Hope to see you sometime soon. Bye-bye.